Short, tense musical intro. I want to get him caught and brought back for trial. So that's the mission, right? And those words from a U.S. official kicked off what was, one of the most intense, high-stakes international manhunts in modern history. We're talking about the global chase for Edward Snowden.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Our story doesn't begin with a big explosion or a car chase. Nope, it starts in the really tense quiet of a hotel room in Hong Kong. And inside, there's this 29-year-old NSA analyst, Edward Snowden, who has just made a decision that's not only going to change his life forever, but it's going to completely alter how we all think about privacy.
So what did he do? Well, he's just handed over almost 1 million top-secret documents to a group of journalists. He even quoted Caesar, saying, "Alia jacta est," the die is cast. I mean, he knew there was no turning back. He had crossed that point of no return, and he was fully expecting that the next thing to happen would be him being led away in handcuffs.
It's easy to forget the human side of these massive global stories. But just look at this. This gives you a really raw glimpse into what was actually going on in that room. He was, to put it mildly, terrified. He was piling pillows up against the door jamb to block anyone from listening in. He'd put a red hood over his head and his laptop just to type his passwords, convinced there were hidden cameras. He even thought a fire alarm going off was some kind of tactic to lure him out. He truly believed it was possible the U.S. might even try to kill him. He was just waiting for that knock on the door.
All right, Section 2, the world's biggest manhunt. This is the moment his identity is revealed. On June 9, 2013, The Guardian newspaper publishes his name and his face for the whole world to see, and the story just explodes. Instantly, the U.S. government knows exactly who they're looking for. The chase is officially on.
And boom, just like that, you've got two completely different narratives. On one hand, you have the U.S. government's view. This guy is a traitor, a criminal, arrogant, someone who betrayed his country. But then you have Snowden's view. He believed officials were departing from the rule of law and that the public was the rightful recipient of this information. So what was he? A traitor or a patriot? Was this treason or a public service? The world was split right down the middle, instantly.
So just like that, he became the subject of probably the largest intelligence manhunt the world has ever seen. Think about that. Suddenly, it's one guy against the entire American intelligence apparatus. He was completely, totally outmatched. And realizing he couldn't possibly navigate this storm alone, he reached out to the one organization he thought might actually be able to help him, WikiLeaks.
Section 3, escape from Hong Kong. And this was truly a race against the clock. You've got the global media hunting for him, U.S. authorities closing in from every angle. Snowden had to just vanish. He bolts from the hotel and goes completely underground, kicking off this frantic race against time.
Okay, so let's just look at this timeline here. June 9th, his identity is revealed. The next day, he disappears from his hotel. But the real pressure cooker moment, that's June 21st. That's when the U.S. formally files criminal charges against him, including charges under the Espionage Act. Now that's a crime that could theoretically carry the death penalty. So yeah, that forced his hand. He had to move, and he had to move right now. 2 days later, he's on a flight to Moscow.
So how'd they pull it off? Well, the escape plan that WikiLeaks came up with was pure spy movie stuff. Step 1, create diversions. They booked more than a dozen decoy flights in Snowden's name, all to different places like India, just to scatter U.S. intelligence. But their biggest break, the thing that made it all possible, was an almost unbelievable clerical error. The U.S. extradition request misspelled his middle name. It said James instead of Joseph. Can you believe that? That one tiny mistake gave them the legal loophole they needed to make a final dash for the airport, hoping that paperwork error would buy them just enough time. And it led to some incredibly tense moments of passport control.
All right, Section 4, trapped in transit. It's checkmate in Moscow. So Snowden and the WikiLeaks journalist traveling with him, Sarah Harrison, they land safely in Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport. They made it out of Hong Kong, but, and this is a big but, Moscow is not their final destination. It's just supposed to be a layover. The plan is to get on another flight to Cuba and from there head to Latin America to seek asylum.
But when they go to check in for that connecting flight to Havana, they hit a brick wall. The ticket agent looks at his passport and basically says, "Your passport doesn't work. Sorry, I can't issue your boarding pass." The U.S. government had just played its next card.
And here's the crucial move. The United States had remotely canceled his passport. Just poof, it's no longer a valid travel document. So now, he's effectively stateless. He can't board any flight to leave, but he also can't legally enter Russia. He's completely stranded, trapped in this bizarre legal no man's land of an airport transit zone.
So now you have to wonder, with no valid passport, stuck in this legal limbo, where could he possibly go? Well, the U.S. wasn't taking any chances. They immediately launched this huge diplomatic pressure campaign, a total full-court press, to make sure that no other country would even think about offering him safe passage. And the doors just started slamming shut, one after another. The State Department was working the phones nonstop. Poland, denied. France, denied. Italy, Spain, Austria, all denied. In fact, out of 21 European nations he applied to for asylum, the vast majority either said no outright or just gave no response at all. The message was loud and clear. Europe was not an option.
Okay, Section 5, grounding a president. This is where the chase takes a turn that is so audacious, so unprecedented, it just shocked the entire world. This is the moment it escalates from a manhunt for one guy into a direct international incident involving a head of state.
Here's how it went down. A wild rumor starts to spread, and it was deliberately started by WikiLeaks, that Snowden is on the Bolivian presidential jet. Now, why Bolivia? Well, their president, Evo Morales, was in Moscow for a summit, and he had just publicly offered Snowden asylum. So for U.S. intelligence, this rumor seemed plausible. They actually believed he might be trying to smuggle Snowden out of the country. So acting on this American intelligence, 4 European nations, France, Portugal, Spain, and Italy, do something absolutely incredible. They deny the presidential plane access to their airspace. A Bolivian official gets the call. They said that you don't have permission to enter French airspace. That one was canceled. This is a massive violation of long-standing diplomatic conventions. You just don't do this to another country's leader. I mean, just stop and think about the sheer power being wielded here. A sovereign leader's plane was literally forced to land in Austria so it could be searched for a fugitive. And of course, Snowden wasn't even on board. The whole thing created a massive, and I mean massive, diplomatic firestorm.
And now we get to the end of the chase, an unexpected sanctuary. Because that international outrage over the Morales incident, it was a huge turning point. It completely backfired on the U.S. It just reinforced this image of Snowden as this lone individual being hunted and cornered by a global superpower that was willing to break pretty much any rule to get him. And that diplomatic fallout gave Russia all the political cover it needed. See, after Snowden refused to cooperate with Russian intelligence, and they did ask, he said no, Moscow was kinda stuck. But now, this whole mess wasn't of their own making. The world was angry at the US, and that gave Russia the perfect opening to make its move. So, after 39 days stranded in an airport transit lounge, Edward Snowden was granted temporary asylum by the Russian government for 1 year. He finally walked outside. And he later said that the simple act of just seeing the sky again for the first time in over a month, it almost brought him to tears.
The chase itself might have been over, but the standoff is far from resolved. You still have these two polar opposite views. The official U.S. stance is that Mr. Snowden is not a whistleblower, he's a criminal, and he needs to be sent back to the United States to face charges. But from another perspective, the reality is that anybody who's ever embarrassed a great power is never going to be safe. The threat is always there. And this whole incredible story really leaves us with a huge, fundamental question. When one person manages to expose the secrets of a superpower, who ultimately holds the power? Is it the individual? Is it the state? Or is it us, the public, that gets to learn the truth? It really makes you think.